Welcome to another episode of She Unplugged. And I have a wonderful woman that I've convinced to come into the podcast.
Hi, Anya. So good to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're very welcome. And we just said that a couple of your dear friends have dared to come early on to the podcast.
Amazing.
So there's that tribe of women that I'm hanging on to from the WIN conference that I try to get back in touch now and see where they're at and what they're doing. And two of your good friends were here. Christina was here.
And my business partner, Christina Limbird.
Talking about Linden Global Education. And
Right.
I'm referring to her and your skill set and values at Linden Global. Whenever I'm talking to somebody, it's
thank you.
It's been a bliss. So guys, if you haven't listened to that podcast, which is in German, but please go there, because I just yesterday talked to somebody who wants to start a social enterprise, and I said, look, you need to listen to that podcast because your two bottom values, your foundation, stuck with me. Do you remember the two?
Of course, excellence and kindness. Absolutely. Can't have one without the other.
Isn't that amazing? So that is, people go there and look at that.
Oh, how wonderful. And Tina's just amazing. And I have to say, Anya, thank you as well for your platform. Thank you so much for that. I just think that I know this amount of work that goes into it and the stories and all the richness in the stories that you're capturing. I think that is really, really amazing. It's a treasure, really. So thank you for putting all that work in.
Thank you for saying that. And that brings me to the right word, stories. Because that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about your story that led you from where you came from to where you are today, and where you are today. And we want to also zoom into that is a fantastic program, Girls Gearing Up, which we're going to talk later about it. It's one of those wonderful projects. But I'm also interested in how did you get there? So why don't you share a little bit of your background, of where you came from, what stages you went through?
Okay, well, yes. I mean, and to as you were saying, yes, stories. I think that my story is still unfolding, right, as all our stories are. So I am Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria, and I'm also an Austrian citizen. The reason being is that my parents had immigrated to Austria when I was 10. My father was working for the United Nations, and so they immigrated there. And my journey had taken me then to study as well in the US, where I studied, political science, and also South Africa. And I ended up also working in the US and Austria, and then in London. And now I'm here in Germany. And as you said, I am the co-founder of Linden Global Learning Support Services, which is based in Berlin. And I'm also the co-founder of Girls Gearing Up International Leadership Academy. In terms of early story, I mean, there's so many parts, right, and so many angles I can take, and parts of my stories that I can share. But as I was thinking about this podcast, I remember one particular story that I realize now in hindsight. It's funny, the things that you start thinking about and thinking, oh, that was actually a pivotal moment in my childhood. And that was when I went to, the first day of school in Austria. You can imagine I've lived, up until 10, I had lived in Nigeria, and I had, that was just my life. And now we're told that we're going to be moving to Austria. So I'm incredibly excited as a 10-year-old. I'm dreaming of this world. Like, how is it in Europe? How does the air feel? What does snow feel like? I'm having all these visions and dreams. And so I remember then I heard that we didn't have to wear uniforms at school. And I thought, wonderful, I've had to wear uniform all my life. Finally, I can wear my fabulous clothes that I only wear on the weekends, like in terms of, party clothes. So I then, we arrive in Austria, and, a couple of weeks in, as we settle down, it's almost the first day of school. and I have my dress laid out. I'm very excited. So the first day arrives, and I, knock on the door, and then the door opens, and this incredible, fabulous teacher that I will never forget, Miss Brooke, opens the door and says, "Good morning, Chineme. Would you like to come in and say hi to your class?" And my heart's beating so fast, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wonder what this is going to be like, and who my new friends are going to be. And then I take one step in, and complete silence. As in, from the back of the room to the front of the room, the kids did not say anything, and all of a sudden, laughter. And I didn't know whether to sink into the hole on the ground or what to do with that. But then all of a sudden, I looked around the room, and I remember thinking, oh, wow, the kids are wearing torn jeans and dirty sneakers. And they just really came as they felt like coming, with t-shirts and what? And I looked at myself, and I had my pretty dress with a ribbon on my hair and sandals and my little frilly socks, because that's how we dressed back home. And so I remember thinking, I have so much to learn, and I hope I can survive. Luckily, Miss Brooke was someone that, she was just fantastic. She really created this environment, I would say, in the classroom that she made me feel like I belonged. She made me know that I belonged, and this was where I needed to be. And I remember she sat me next to this wonderful girl called Fifi, who was Palestinian Syrian, and actually we've called each other every year for 30 years on our birthday. Sorry, not every year. Every year on our birthday for 30 years. And we've just ended up becoming very close, because we're one day apart for our birthdays, so we either celebrated it or called each other. Doesn't matter where we are, even if she is like in the hospital, we call each other on our birthday, 30 years. So, but she created this environment, Miss Brooke, and I think that left a mark in me. It's how she really made space for me to say what I had to say. My accent, I was aware, was different. The way I looked was different. My hair was different, but she really, really, really made me feel at home.
Looking back, how did she do that?
Oh, gosh.
What did she do in the classroom? Because, I mean, that's the story today. How can we make somebody else welcome? How can we live inclusion in our society today? So Brooks, how did she do it?
Oh my gosh, Miss Brooke, I tell you, do you know what? It's even in the littlest things. Like, I really have to think what she did. It was really how I remember how I felt around her. There was something that I felt safe around her, and I knew that she had my back. But I know there was little things that she did, like she really made an effort to pronounce my name correctly, because I didn't, she just did, She made an effort, she made the class do it. And, she brought books as well that were representative of my culture. If there was ever, I remember if there was ever a classroom discussion, because at this time you can imagine, you're thinking, okay, if I raise up my hand and speak, will they understand what I say? Because I had experienced that. People would say, what do you mean by that? And there were all these differences that I didn't really know how to navigate. But she will wait until I rose up my hand to actually, ask a question or to answer a question. Mm-hmm. And to give you another example of the fruit of this. So a couple of months later, I remember I found out that it was her birthday coming up. And so I decided, okay, so all of this time, my confidence is building slowly, and I'm trying to make friends. I'm doing what I can do because that's kind of who I am. So I write a letter to the friends, and I say, because there's no phone back then, so everything was all paper and pen or pencil and pen.
Yes, we are that old.
Exactly. So I write a letter to friends, and I said, hey, you know what? Let's do a birthday party, surprise birthday party for Miss Brooke. So I remember Andrew, I don't know where he is now, but Andrew had said, my mom makes the most fantastic cakes. I said, great, Andrew, that's your job, tick. Another friend said, my brother's cassette player has, the Backstreet Boys or something. I said, great, tick, bring that with you. Another person brought the balloons. Anyway, so at the end, her birthday came up, and we celebrated this, we did a whole surprise thing. And Miss Brooke burst into tears, and she said, in all her years of teaching, nobody had ever done this to her. But you know what? I think that not only did I feel 6 inches taller because I knew I was able to do this. I brought people together. I was able, but when I think about it now in hindsight, I realized that that feeling of belonging, the fruit of that was then the contribution, right? So because I felt that way, because I felt that Ms. Brooke really, really was there for me and she really valued me, I was able to contribute. And that was what was empowering, in a sense, if that makes sense. So I think that's been a theme now in my life, is just how do we create a space for people to feel like they belong? How do we also feel that when we are, for example, my life, where I've traveled in so many different, countries and lived in so many different countries, and how do you create that sense of community and belonging? And in order for people to be their best selves and do their best work. And we can't underestimate how powerful it is, I think, for young children, especially when we're talking about inclusion, and how to really realize that can influence the trajectory of their lives. And I wonder how and who she would be today if I didn't have that, the Ms. Brooks in the school.
That's why I went in there, because I mean, we're living in a village. And we've also experienced, when my kids were smaller in primary school, girls and boys from other cultures joining the classroom. And we have seen all sorts of different experiences. And the Miss Brooks, I think they are still rare.
Absolutely.
They're still rare in between. There are only a few. And if you're not lucky to have a Miss Brooks, then it can flip the other way. And we have experienced that, and we have seen what that can do to a class.
Right.
We have seen what that does to, I've seen what it does to my daughter at the time, who I then had to explain things that I couldn't explain to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so valuable that you're telling the story, how she made you feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is,
as you're in that stage where you are questioning, where do I belong and how do I belong?
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of times the Ms. Brooks, I'm sure with what the wealth and experience that I have had, or be able to have all these years now, I'm sure if I go back to that classroom and maybe I'm a fly on the wall, I wouldn't see that she's probably done some things maybe not right. Maybe she's made a couple of mistakes in her attempt to be inclusive. But I would say that it's the caring, this fact that she is consistent about being she was intentional and she was consistent, that trumps all the mistakes that she made. And I think a lot of people sometimes don't want to, they hold back because they think, oh, if I try this, or if I say too much in this way, then I might make a mistake. But you can't go wrong when you actually care.
I was talking to Claire the other day about neurodiversity, completely different topic, but we also ended up talking about schools and about teachers, and also in the workplace. If you talk about something, if you make it known, if you are open to discuss difficult issues, difficult points, you find together a way to solve it. So, but if you are nervous, and I know I'm guilty of that too, how do I navigate? How do I ask a question that might be ethnically not 100% correct or politically not correct? How do I do that? Because I do not want to insult, I do not want to hurt. And I have had bad experience where I said something out of naivety, stupidity, whatever you call it, and I hurt somebody in the process, which I didn't intend to, but I saw the reaction on the other side. And I find it on both sides, if you're coming into an environment where there's a different culture, a different ethnicity, different skin color, different religion. Okay, what can I also do to make it easier for the other side, and how the other side comes my way, so we create something new? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that luckily, we're living, unlike before, like you said, with our generation, you know, like we're living in an age where there's so much information now, right? And there's so many narratives out there, and there's so many stories. So I think that it's something that, again, I love the word intentionality, because I think it's really about being intentional about learning and, you know, reading. And I would say not just nonfiction, but also fiction, just reading stories and not seeing, because even whatever group you're interacting with or person, the group that they're part of is not a monolith, right? So I think there's a lot of work to be intentional about learning about different stories and experiences. I mean, I can only speak as a person of color, you know, to really, that's something that, you know, I don't know how much Ms. Brooke had done that, but I felt that she did. Felt that she did, because she made that effort. There were so many things I felt like I didn't have to explain to her.
I think the point is the intention. We can still make mistakes. I mean, you said, so you lived in Nigeria, you lived in Austria, you lived and worked and studied in the US, now in Germany. I mean, these are very, very different cultures. When you're looking back, what was your part of creating inclusion for yourself in those different environments?
Wow, I would say, maybe if I could maybe rephrase that, would be maybe what was my part in creating community for myself?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because I think that that is such a big question, especially because the question that I find has often been tied with that is, you know, where do you feel at home? And so this issue of this question of communities is pretty big for me. I would say that for me, it's been very, when I move somewhere, I think also because of the travels I've done, there's always someone that I know that is there, and I quickly plug into their community. So, so whether it's my girlfriend in Mongolia, you know, like if I travel to work somewhere there, I would plug into a community. And I think I've just been really lucky, because the school that I did go to, and was quite international. And when I went to university as well, in the US, I was part of the, you know, International Students Association and the African Students Association. And so when we graduated, we also spread around the world. So I plug into those communities, I plug into communities, and whether it's also art classes, you know, or things where there's a group. So I'm really intentional about looking for community groups that share similar values or interesting to me, and then quite intentional about that as well. But beyond that, I also have a really solid group of friends, really solid group of friends. I think you were mentioning this earlier about the tribe. And I do. And I think for me, the older I get, the more I realize how important it is to actually invest in those friendships. Because as the pressure grows, you know, it's almost as though they're the safety net that keep me going. And also the sounding board as well. You know, you go out in this world and you might experience, you know, a great day, or you might experience discrimination, and being able to come back into this space and say, hey guys, this just happened. Am I going crazy? What's going on? And just to be able to have that community, even if we're all around the world, of girlfriends who have really got your back no matter what. I think that has been so important for me. So to answer your question, I think nurturing those communities and looking for those communities has been my way of doing that.
And that's again something that you can actually pay attention to. That's something where it's your part to look for those communities. That's what I'm hearing. It's not like waiting to say, oh, please rescue me.
Oh.
Please ask me out, please friends come to me, but actually where and how can I find community where I do feel safe?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, it's a non-negotiable. It's almost like a survival tactic. I have to, you know, I don't have the luxury, I feel, of just, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, and I know that there's always going to be someone, and I know that I'm always going to be fine, but I think that it's always, I'm really believe in being intentional about cultivating community. So what I did in DC, I actually worked for a really wonderful organization called Center for Artistry in Teaching. And they would go out into local schools and pretty much ignite the fire in teachers and make them passionate again about teaching, and do all these incredible workshops. And I loved it. But, you know, at the back of my mind, when I graduated, I always thought, somehow I would be like my dad, I would go into, you know, diplomacy. So it was always there, but somehow my legs were carrying me a different way. I was, you know, applying for these organizations that dealt with education or children's rights. So it was kind of, you know, there wasn't that congruence at that time. And I think I always led both. You know, and so at one point I then moved to Austria, back to Burgenland, and did my master's degree there. And afterwards I got a job there working for sort of a think tank, and we would do peace building workshops in the Great Lakes in Africa. But again, at the other, while I was doing that, I was volunteering with the local schools in my neighborhood in this small village. So I was there thinking, yes, you know, I'm still going in this area of diplomacy, but then my legs were still taking me to the schools to volunteer and talk about, you know, I did storytelling with the little kids. And I think it only came together one day when I, you know, had finished this workshop in, I believe I was in Entebbe. I mean, a really wonderful people, wonderful workshop. But I remember thinking, I want to work with kids. I want to work with young people. It just clicked, you know? So I thought all the time, I'll just volunteer with young people, do storytelling on the side. And at the same time, I'm going to keep going for this career path. And then I did a bit of a turn. So I applied and I got a job at a school, at an international school in Berlin. And that was it. There was no going back. Stayed there for a couple of years. That's where I met Christina, my current partner. And when I left, I felt I want to continue working with young people, but this time as you know, on my own, independently. So I used to be called the teen whisperer. It's quite funny now I think about it, because I really loved working with teens. I really do. They're my happy place, you know. I mean, I don't work with them as much anymore, you know, my work that I do with Linden, but because now I'm leading the company, but that's what I did for a while. And then Christina said, hey, you know what, why don't we start this company? And, you know, we hit it off ever since then. And then we've been growing the company for 5 years. And then on the side, we then also, together with Courtney Adams, who's amazing, we launched the Girls Growing Up International Leadership Academy. So that journey has been interesting,
yeah,
you know, of what I thought I was going to do and where my legs were taking me, or how my heart was leading me, I would say.
What is it for you about working or spending time with kids and teenagers? What does the interaction make your happy place? Because you called it your happy place. That's a,
yes.
You know, what is it about them?
You know, I think that, and by the way, what I mean by happy place is it's also even when the kids are, you know, described as troublesome or difficult, I just think, oh, it's okay. They're navigating this life, you know. I think there's something about just knowing that no matter how tall they look, especially teenagers, by the way, when I talk about kids, I'm talking specifically teenagers, you know, no matter how tall they look, no matter how they respond to you, no matter how, you know, they push you away or what, they really do. I really believe that they really want to grow, and they really want to contribute, and they really want to give. And that age, you know, they're still open to ideas. They're still open to, you know, to so many things. They're not so hardened by the world, I would say, at least in my experience. So I think there's some, and I think, you know, we see this as well with, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement that happened last year, whether it was the End SARS movement in Nigeria. They have been really inspirational as well in terms of leading social movements and change. And so I have been inspired by young people as well, you know, so it's not so much what I feel like I can give to them, you know, mentoring and how open they are to wanting to contribute to the world, but young people have been driving a lot of change. They have this zeal, and a lot of times, you know, they're driven by this demand for a better world, you know, as sometimes crazy it might seem, as, you know, there is this drive that is, I think, in a lot of young people. So they've been I find them very inspirational, and they are my happy place as a result of that.
No, but that I can understand, because if you look at the last 5 years, I would say, there have been two very, very strong movements, especially in the US and in Europe. One is really the climate change, the
Yes.
climate policy, where I find that generation now saying, you know what, we just had it.
We've had it.
Had it. Why don't you just get your job done? And the same thing in the US with gun control and Black Lives Matter, these two large movements. It's again the younger generation saying, well, what? How long does it take you? So I understand that there's some energy there that that's empowering.
Yeah. And I was going to say, because I had to sort of get my thoughts around this first, I was going to say one other thing that is also a happy place with regards to teens is that I think I realized time and time again, it sometimes just takes that one person in their life, that can really change the trajectory of their.
Be there, Miss Brooks.
Oh my goodness, absolutely, right?
That could
be. And of course, having worked in education, there's I would get these, letters or emails from students, 5-10 years later saying, hey, you know what, thank you for believing in me, or thank you for always seeing the best in me, and I think, especially teachers get this quite a bit, I bet, from their former students, especially the Miss Brooks. But just knowing that you can really make a huge impact on a young person's life when you genuinely say, I see you, and I know that it might be tough, but we'll get there, and I'm here for you, if you need. So I think that's really, that's something for me that is really special.
That gives me goosebumps. That sentence, I see you, that I find so strong in itself. That's really the only thing we all want. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be taken serious.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Nothing else matters really. We all want to tell our story, and for you to give the teenagers, and I do have two, so it is a very, very difficult age. And and a lot of times when I ask my daughters, well, what is it actually you expect now from me? Instead of saying, help me, they say, just listen.
Absolutely.
Just listen and be there, and in reverse, what I'm saying, I could tell you what I would do, but that doesn't solve your problem. But I'm here for you when things go pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So I think we can't undervalue the impact teachers, parents, friends, enterprises like Girls Gearing Up having on teenagers. And now let's just zoom in on girls, because when you look at all the statistics now with COVID, we women are again the losers worldwide.
Absolutely.
We're losing unproportionately our jobs, and then women of color and other ethnic groups just even more. So we are losing more than our male counterparts. The program Girls Gearing Up, how was that born?
Oh, yeah. So Girls Gearing Up is our special passion project. It was born, so just to give some background. So Girls Gearing Up is an international leadership academy for young girls aged 13 to 17. And we bring together a group of diverse girls for a week of empowerment, leadership training, inspiration. And for the most part, when the girls return home, they implement social justice projects and take on leadership roles in their schools and community. Thanks to COVID, as you said, we're all struggling with, how to, COVID. And so we had to move the program online. We ended up doing a 11-week program. So the girls we met up with the girls once a week for 11 weeks. And it was amazing just to see how they all would sit there for 2.5 hours to 3 hours sometimes, from Chile to Kenya to Malawi to, you know, Germany. I mean, it was just an incredible group of young, brilliant girls. But to give you a bit of background as to how it started, you know, so myself and then Christina Limbert and Courtney, we founded it in 2015. Courtney and Teen had already been toying with this idea a lot. And so we came into it from different angles. So I was already, you know, teen whisperer, super excited about working with teenagers. And they had previously done really fantastic youth camps as well. So they came in from these backgrounds, and we all sat down and said, you know what, our main goal is really how can we support and equip the next generation of female leaders. So we came into that with that desire, with that passion. I tell you, Anya, every single thing we have done with the program from the beginning to the end is so intentional. From the moment the girls interact with us via email or a call or whatever, to the interviews, to the time they arrive on camp, whether it's online or offline, to the time they leave, it is literally about, like you said, you know, like we talked about earlier, we see you, you belong here, and we've got your back. But the reason why we also focus specifically on girls, as you know, is that, you know, there is still so much underrepresentation of women in so many different spheres. So that's, you know, I would say that's the most important aspect for us.
Because you started in 2015.
Correct.
Can you just give us a figure, how many girls you've gone through?
Oh, okay. So when we started, I believe it was 21 girls that started, and we've been doing it every year ever since. So now we're definitely in the hundreds. And I think they came from, gosh, I can't really quote me here, but I know that now we have girls that represent 37 countries. That's amazing. You know, we actually put together a bit of a infographic recently. You can find it on the website, on our Facebook page. And that's the way it's grown. Another thing to know is that we are the only leadership, I would say, program for international leadership program for teenage girls in Europe. I hope this doesn't stay the way, because I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think we all need to roll up our sleeves and do something, but currently we're the only ones who are doing that. Like I said, you know, gender inequalities are still so deep rooted in every society. Women are still underrepresented in political and economic decision-making processes.
Yep.
So, despite the fact that research shows that, you know, better representation of women in leadership positions helps, you know, deliver better policy outcomes, for example, in health, in education, etc. So, you know, we felt that focusing on girls is so logical almost, and so strategic. So that's why we're doing it. And we specifically focus on them at this age, because we think that, you know, this is a really critical stage in their lives. You know, there is some research around how girls' confidence plummets during puberty. So we think that's also a great time to just be there to help to really nurture them. So we create this environment where we celebrate risk taking. And when I mean celebrate risk taking, yes, we do that. So if you step out of your comfort zone, we are excited about that. You know, we encourage them to speak up, to really own their space, to bring their full selves into the community, and and to just be part of this greater network of incredible women and girls. So that's been that's girls growing up. We do have 3 main pillars, and I can talk about that if you want as well, as to, you know, of the program that we run. We're very passionate about this academy.
The passion is tangible. That is there. Now, when you started in 2015, now we have 2021. It's coming up to 6 years.
Yeah.
Could you share with us an example where you say that girl did the program in 15 or 16 and she's doing that now? Can you give us an example how you shaped the lives of one example girl?
Oh my word, there are so so many. It's so hard to pick
one.
but I will pick one. I will try to pick one. So we had this wonderful, wonderful girl who joined us. She actually had joined us every year since the start. So she came in 2015. I have to say Tina's memory is much better than I am, but she came in 2015 and I kid you not, you know, with her body language and her hair, just, you know, quite introverted and quite insecure. And, you know, she just came back every year. What I thought was so fantastic was, you know, what we do is that we have these WhatsApp groups so that the girls can also stay in touch with each other after they've, you know, left the program. And she came every year, and girls would then share what they're trying out in their school or what they're doing. So I think this was probably maybe the third year or so, from somebody who had been incredibly insecure and very shy, didn't really have, you know, had so many questions about where she belonged and identity and all that, to her sending us a message on the WhatsApp group and saying, hey, you know what? I'm stepping out there and I'm putting together a TED Talk for my entire school. I mean, I still have goosebumps. And there she was filming it. And of course the girls just went, you know, crazy. Did a TED Talk where she was really talking about the LGBTQ rights and really talking about, you know, standing tall and being vocal about her experiences and her perspective and her passion for human rights. I could not have been prouder. I could not. So she came pretty much every year for 5 years. She unfortunately can no longer join us anymore because now she's above 17, but we still have her, you know, chime in, and I believe she's now in our youth advisory board. So we have those, but there's one particular story that I absolutely adore, and it was one of the girls as well who came in quite shy, and you know, I think she also struggled because she wasn't very confident in her English at the time, although she understood perfectly and could, you know, speak. And what we normally do is that we have this chant called, you know, every time we were about to speak, we would say, hey, GGU. And then there's a call and respond. And then the group, no matter what you're doing, whether you're brushing your teeth or you're walking somewhere, you stop and you say, you look for the person who said it and you say the name. So, and respond. So you would say, hey, Chi, you know, so that's how we do it. Anyway, so incredibly quiet, you know, very reserved and you know, not really, I would say, contributing as much as we know that she probably would have liked to. And then on the very last day on camp, you know, she pulls up a chair. We're all doing different things. We're working where she pulls up a chair, she stands on the chair and she screams, hey, GGU. The way all the girls jumped in the air and they were clapping and she couldn't even say what she had to say because it was this collective feeling of, we see you and we're so glad that you feel that you can share something with us. And I think that was so precious. And I remember just being so touched, not even so much about what she was about to say, but how the community and how the girls had responded to that boldness. You know, and I think it's not even, just as I guess a disclaimer, it's not even about, you know, not being confident and being shy and being not shy or loud or not loud. It's really just feeling safe enough to show up. And I think that's, so however your personality type is, you know, that's we're all diverse in that sense, right? But I think it's feeling safe enough to show up is something that we are very, very passionate about, and we want all the girls to experience. So those are some two stories. I can go on and on and on.
No, but that's beautiful because, you know, the stories, that's what we remember.
Yes.
And that's kind of like the feeling that comes from there. And the thought I had while you talked was earlier when you said what really helps you in your life is the friendships you created, the tribes you're using, where you're tugging into communities wherever you go. And the feeling I'm having is like, well, this is exactly what you're creating for those girls now.
Absolutely.
You're creating those communities when they travel to wherever the other girls are, they have somebody to connect with. And
Isn't it funny how this works? You know, and it's funny because it's only now that I see the connection. You know, you think you know yourself, and then you think, oh, that's why I do. It's so predictable in many ways, Mal.
no,
But
but
yeah,
it helped you, and it was so much in your bones, in your fiber, that you're saying, well, this is really what I needed, that you're now creating it for these girls.
yeah, with an amazing team, really. It's absolutely right. I mean, even when the girls come into camp, you know, this is when we were doing live camps, we spent at least a day or two completely renovating the space. We really believe that you know, the space that the girls are going to enter into should still also communicate value as well. So we don't want it to just look like any old youth hostel. We want to place value on these girls. And so we have signs on the walls that say, you belong here. You know, we have their names written out on their, you know, on the mirrors or on their room doors. You know, we have every child's profile, what they're interested in, what they're afraid about, so we're very, 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 very intentional about that, you know, and we make sure that every single girl has an opportunity to take on a leadership role throughout the time that they're with us as well. So, yeah.
Now, let me just ask you that, because you mentioned it, due to COVID, you obviously couldn't meet in person, and you did that 11-week online program. Now, just the preparation part, you know, turning the youth hostel into a campus of girls gearing up, well, that's not possible anymore. So what other things are you doing now consciously, so that the girls, although only meeting online, still get that sense, I'm belonging here, I'm just okay, I'm good enough as I am? How do you do that?
Absolutely, great question. I would say we had this question even as we were designing the program, and what it came down to, we said, you know what, let's go back to what our 3 pillars are. Because we thought about those, we put a lot of thought into that as well. So how do we grow confidence? You know, how do we help the girls grow confidence? How do we do this? So that's one of the pillars, is we help them to grow confidence. Like I said, we celebrate their wins, their risk taking. So the second pillar is, you know, getting equipped, giving them the tools that they need. For example, schools are still teaching this, you know, the same things, but the workplace has changed. So we try and teach what they're not learning in school. So whether it is project management or, you know, design thinking, but just what are the tools that we can do. And the third one is we want to inspire them. So it's be inspired, right? So again, it's, you know, grow confidence, getting equipped, and being inspired. Why? Because we really believe you have to see to be it. So what we want to do is that we bring women to our meetings, and then they would, women who are able to share their stories, you know, their challenges, their journeys with these girls. So we've had women who come from all kinds of, you know, who are all spheres, whether they're entrepreneurs or, you know, tech people or astronauts. We've brought them to speak to the girls. And so these are the 3 things that are really, really important for us. And we did the same things as well in the online, for the online academy. We had incredible power mentors that came in and spoke to the girls as well about their journey. And the girls also moderate these sessions. And there was this sense of intimacy as well that is created during these sessions, because here you have some COO or, you know, some scientist or some incredible woman who seems very accomplished coming and then, you know, answering their questions on their turn, you know, the questions that they have in a really genuine and authentic way. And I think that that's been quite a powerful way for, you know, for the girls for us to carry that, you know, that feeling of community as well. But those are the 3 pillars that we were very intentional about, making sure that they were what we also did when we moved online.
Well, you basically came back to your roots, to the foundation, to
Absolutely, we came back to the roots of the foundation, and I have to say though, we found just little few techniques as well. We found that we were incredibly animated. You know, by the end of the 2.5 hours, our cheek muscles hurt so much. We, you know, because before, right, when it is live and the girls do something amazing, we are clapping and, you know, you can feel the energy in the room. Everyone is excited, you know, la, la, la. But now when it's online, how do you actually do that? And so we created these signs, you know, so we would have, you know, you go girl, or yes, wonderful. And then every time somebody would say something that we loved, you know, we would, you know, stick it up on the screen and show everybody, you know, and that became a culture. That became something that the girls then started to imitate and do as well, which is another thing as well. You know, how do you create culture online? Because that's something that we were also very intentional about doing when we were doing it live as well, you know. So for example, celebrating risk taking, we would, you know, as facilitators, we clap, we give comments, we give feedback, we challenge people, and then the girls over time will catch on. Yeah, they start doing the same things. They start they understand this is what we do. If someone says something great, we thank them, right?
Yeah.
And how do we then translate this online? And so we had to pull out so many, you know, tricks to try and, you know, celebrate the girls who are speaking. What else did we do? I'm trying to think of what else we did, but, you know, I think that was our first try. We did a bit of a debrief session and we'll definitely, you know, improve it. But for us, making sure that those pillars remained in the program and making sure that we were able to still also celebrate the girls and, you know, have these breakout sessions where the girls can really have more in-depth conversation and also connect with each other, because that's really important. So these were the things that we put in place.
That's great. I mean, I just saw somebody online doing something really cool. She had just she had a piece of wood and then the cardboard, and she had drawn a heart on it, and she would just hold that up.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, or you can basically thumb up or some visual, because you need some visual cue there. Let me ask you that, Chineme. The 3 pillars are there. I understand them. And you are part of a team who's mentoring these girls, meaning you need to step into those 3 pillars too and show them, well, I'm still doing it. I'm still, you know, implementing those 3 pillars in your own life. So when was it the last time you took a risk?
Oh, every day.
What skill did you, or are you in the process where you're saying, I'm learning that now? And who or what inspired you recently?
Wow. Anya, you have the questions. Wow. Okay. What was the first one? The first one was when?
Well, it's your first pillar, risk-taking confidence. When was it the last time you really took a risk?
Yes. You know, I think for me, yeah, because the first pillar is growing confidence. I think for me, I find that I'm constantly, and this is why I think this is probably why I love this aspect of the pillar, is that I realize there's such a pull to go back to default and my safe place and be, you know, comfortable and just do what I know how to do. But fortunately, unfortunately, I own a company, right? And I feel like we're constantly taking a risk. You know, but I think because what's really been helpful is because we are, you know, I partner with Tina, and she is just seriously an incredible person. We have that, you know, support, I would say, for each other, you know. So we take risks all the time. We take financial risks. We take these decisions that sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming, and we wonder how are we going to do it. So I think we're almost used to it now, because we know that we always come through. It's been 5 years in the making, and we know that we always come through, and we work hard. If it means extra hours at night, we'll do it, you know, and we have that support network. But for me, it's almost as though it comes as part of being an entrepreneur. is that you're constantly taking those risks. Now, are there other areas that I would like to take a risk, be more risk, taking more risks? Absolutely. Funny enough, you probably might not notice this, but I am not a huge fan of talking at all. If I could have a glass of wine and just be, somewhere quiet and not have to talk on a platform or in a podcast like this, I would. But I know how to overcome it, and I know how to step over that fear of, or like this, public speaking. And, I've had to do it a couple of times. So, yeah, so I think with COVID, I thought, yes, I wouldn't be asked to do any speaking on stage, but here we are with podcasts. No, and it's been such a pleasure, because I have to say, Anna, you are such an amazing...
You're not on stage, so I give you that. You are in
except for the fact that this goes around the world.
In your home or your office in a nice chair. And so what I heard was risk. And what I also heard was that it's part of your daily business.
Yeah.
You didn't give us precise example. That's interesting. It's like it's becoming a second skin, but it's not a... I give you an example this morning. My personal trainer had put barrier on the floor and asked me to step over them. and I wanted to hold on to something. And he said, no, don't hold on to anything. I will be here standing and I hold you.
Wow.
I had to take, and it was literally, I mean, it's a small thing for somebody. For me, it's huge to step over and come back and trust him that when I stumble, he will hold me. Mm-hmm. That was my risk taking this morning. Mm-hmm. And I was very aware of it. And because you said overcoming the fear, when you're so aligned with risk taking, overcoming the fear is also like a second nature. And when you're teaching the girls confidence, it's like, okay, well, how do I actually overcome that fear?
Mm-hmm. You do it.
Well, but how?
You do it. You feel it and you do it. You feel the fear and you do it, you know? So like I would give the example of public speaking. I feel the fear a lot. I really do have that anxiety around speaking in public, but I feel it and I just do it. But I have to say, for me, and I think that might be similar to what you were saying with your trainer as well. It's so important for me to know who I can go back to right after. It's so important for me. Like I have to be able to reflect with, say, a girlfriend and say, hey, you know what, I just did it. I just did this. Like my group of girls, and I just did this, and even if sometimes they just be really quiet with me and just listen, or they would say, yes, well done. But just knowing that I can go back to that space and say, hey, you actually did this today. Mm-hmm.
It's again your group. It's again your peers. It's again your culture around you. Any skills that you're acquiring?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to say that is one area that I want to be more intentional about. Okay. Skills that I'm acquiring. I've had to learn a lot specifically through the business, and even girls growing up, leadership skills is something that it's always, there's always a new thing, especially as our business grows, as we hire more people. The way I dealt with, or I worked with a group when we were smaller is quite different from where we are now. When we started 5 years ago, just 3 of us, and now there's 41 people on our team, that work with us. It's almost like I have to update my skill sets or my leadership skills. But then there's also very practical things like, really financial acumen, which, I have to say I don't have an MBA. We work, like I said, we work hard. We have an amazing Steuerberater, like a tax advisor, and a great team, but we still have to know our numbers. And so I've had to acquire that skill just to be able to learn. And sometimes, it takes me longer sometimes with numbers to understand numbers. And I have to then have maybe extra time afterwards when we have a meeting to really process the numbers and understand it for myself. So I think those are some skills that I want to dive more deeply into, you know, leadership skills and numbers, understanding numbers. I think this is so huge.
That's true. And who or what inspired you recently?
Oh, who or what inspired me recently? You know what? Let me go with my mom, because there's so many people that have inspired me. Like I talked about the young people that inspired me, but I would say my parents inspired me, but I would go with my mom in this one. She is quite an amazing woman. I remember when I was younger, I would always say, "Oh, I really wish I would be wise like my mom." You know? And there's a couple of stories, and I think the two stories that I remember, and when we were younger, you know, as you can imagine, back then in Austria, there weren't that many people of color, but then when you see one, you see, oh, wow, you see another Black person, you smile, you nod, you know, you really want to acknowledge that we've seen each other. And so my mom, I remember we were, you know, this is one of many examples. We were at a store and the cashier just happened to be this African woman. So my mom, of course, makes the effort to go into that lane. So she would go and say, hello. Hi. And there is something about just that love that she gives in those very short, brief moments, you know, where she just, you know, she just says hello and she asks about her kids, doesn't matter who's behind in the line, you know, and asks about how she is. And it's just this whole thing of, yes, we're both here. We're both here. We're both here, you know. And of course, you know, a week or two later, that same woman is now in my house drinking tea and my mother becomes the godmother of her children. You know, it's this whole thing. But I think that's the special. And the second story that I would have, she's probably going to kill me for saying this, was once, you know, when I was younger, we went to a party at a house and there was a lots of people that were, you know, just hanging out and sitting and talking. And somehow I noticed anyway, that the men were sitting in the living room, all in a circle and just talking. And then the women were sort of going in the kitchen. And I don't think, it wasn't like anyone said, hey, women, go to the kitchen and do this. It just happened to be the group dynamic, what was happening, right? So we arrived, me and my mom, and she goes into the kitchen and she chats with the ladies and she, you know, she says hi to them and everybody has a little bit of a laugh. And then she comes back out and then she asks one of the guys, oh, can you open up the circle? I'd like to sit here, please. So he opens up the circle and she sits there because she prefers the conversation. And as a kid, I remember thinking, I am mortified. This is, what are you doing, Mom? But at the same time, I was so proud of her. And I think this whole thing of, you know, creating community, something that she's done incredibly well. She's incredibly smart, but also being the captain of her ship. And I think those are some things that I've absolutely adored about her, apart from the fact that she's just also a brilliant scientist and incredibly spiritual as well, you know. But I think she's somebody that inspires me every day. And those are just two stories from the past. So.
And the second story you told, the image sticks with me. Because that's really what it is. Us women in the workplace,
yeah.
To step into the circle or towards the circle and saying, would you please make space for me now? I prefer the communication here.
She just, you know, it was just a matter of fact, like, oh, I'm sitting here, you know, and there was this awkward silence at the beginning, or laughter at the beginning, but they did. I thought, okay, because why not?
Yeah, that's how these things change. If she had waited for one man to come into the kitchen and ask her, would you care to come into the circle? I mean, she probably would still be standing in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
And that's what women in workplaces need to do. If they're waiting for the invitation to the table to take place in decision making or run they can be waiting a long time.
Absolutely. I mean, there's obviously so many barriers, right?
Yeah.
So there's either internal barriers, there's also structural barriers, you know, that prevent women from actually sitting in those circles. But I think that, you know, you almost have to have this relentless push to continue going. And even if you don't break through that circle, you have a torch and you give it to the next generation to do it. And, you know, and you continue to have that conversation that more and more men and women and people start to realize, oh my gosh, yes, we need you here. We need your voice. It's so important to be on this circle.
And that's why your work with teenagers is so valuable. And also starting even earlier, the work with kids, and not just with girls. I would actually say it takes also working with the boys who then would make space in the circle, or who even would dare to go to the kitchen and saying, look,
Absolutely.
you want to join us? It's getting boring.
This is why I love working with young people. Absolutely. You know, in a dream world, we would have also one for boys, but we're focusing on girls now. And, you know, even, you know, we did with Lyndon, we had a summer camp for boys, for the younger ones from 7 to, I believe, 9. And we called it the Budding Boys Camp. And what we taught the boys as well was, you know, friendship and social change, and the amazing ideas that came out of this group, you know, so, because they understand fairness and inequality on such a deep level, actually, you know, and they understood the concepts. And so at the end, they had to do this presentation, and they did one on, you know, some beautiful ones. You can probably see it on the website as well, or our Facebook group, where one of the boys talked about, you know, all people should have their dreams realized, or to dream their dreams. And another one talked about the gender pay gap, you know, and another one talked about, you know, everyone should be treated equal. So these are the, you know, we can, like we always talk, we'll be saying throughout, you know, this is the age where we should be having those conversations, where we must be having those conversations about privilege, about power, and about platform. Because what else are we doing, you know? And why would we wait until they're much older and we say, oh, wait, you know, you need to make space. Let's have those conversations much younger, you know? Let's really have those conversations around, yeah, privilege, power, and the platforms that these men have. You know? And I think that kids understand that really deeply. When you say, this person has been given this amount of money and this person's been given this amount, do you think that's fair? You know, no, it's not. What do you think we can do to change it, you know? So yeah, this is why, I guess, young people, happy place.
Happy place. I like it. Now, at the end of the podcast, Chineme, I'm always asking the same questions. 2, was there a question you wish I had asked that I didn't? Or the other one is there something where you say that is so important to me, I just would like to underline it?
Gosh, such a good question. I would say what's important to me is, you know, if I were to say, yeah, I would say to listen to girls. I think that they have so much to say and they're ready to go. Create this environment for them, you know, see them, like we've been saying throughout this podcast, see them, see their identities, their intersecting identities. So for example, the Mrs Brooks didn't just see me as a student, but I was an African student, I was a Nigerian student, I was an Igbo student, I was also a girl. See their intersection identities, you know, hear their stories and their experiences. Believe in them, you know, sponsor, mentor, you know, for example, with Girls Growing Up, there are many ways that people can get involved, whether it's through, you know, donating or sponsoring, but there are many ways to do that, but be intentional about really, I would say, believing in them and showing that you believe in them. And finally, pass the mic. Pass the mic to the next generation, especially girls. Let's hear what they have to say. Let's give them a platform. I think the world is aching for new forms of leadership. And I think that it is time that we give the girls the mic to start practicing their voice and giving them the space to step into those circles.
Now, that brought me to...
That wasn't the last question.
Yeah, no, there's no question. It's just you saying what you said about, you know, giving them the mic. I'm basically offering you to name a handful of girls where you say they should come on my podcast.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh my gosh. Yes, 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 and yes. I have what handful do you want? 1 hand, 2 hands?
Well, we start with a handful, which is like, I don't know, in every, well, depending on where.
You know how you hold it.
Start with a handful and see. I would like to give them the platform to talk about their story, to talk about stepping into their role, wherever they are, however age they are, whatever culture they are.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much for offering your platform.
Chineme, from really the bottom of my heart. I know time is valuable. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for letting us share our stories, right? I think that is so powerful and so valuable what you're doing. And you've been so consistently doing this for so many years now. So thank you, thank you, thank you.